Ingredients in toothpaste are not meant to be on the skin. There are tons of evidence-based products and ingredients that he could have incorporated into this routine. So already he should have applied that before the moisturizer. He is adorable, he is famous, and he is a doctor. And of course, I could only be talking about Dr. Mike. This is his evening skincare routine, I guess through Harper's Bazaar. I've never seen this. I'm a big fan of his content. I think that his approach is generally very balanced, very nuanced. I don't think that he, creates a lot of content that's meant to be like sensationalist, which he could easily do as an attractive doctor. It would be very easy for him to go online and make a ton of money very quickly, saying and doing any number of things. Now, his skincare routine, of course, I am not familiar with. It's always interesting too whenever we're talking about non-dermatologist physicians and what they think makes sense in terms of a skincare routine. You're trained on some level to use an evidence base to support decisions related to the care of the human body. And of course, skin is included in that. That being said, I think that what we can often tell is that some physicians that are not dermatologists, that are not plastic surgeons, for example, that are not they're not directly housed within the aesthetics space. Sometimes they are, in many ways, just as susceptible as anybody else to misinformation around skincare, around certain cosmetic procedures. It's really only when industry experts or the professionals themselves enter into the conversation that some of that misinformation is clarified. Even dermatologists and estheticians, for sure, are known to spread misinformation. So that doesn't mean that being in the industry makes you immune to that. However, it's interesting to see what some people who theoretically have some kind of justification for saying or believing some of the things that they do. Of course, if you are a physician, you have an extensive educational background. So there's a lot of reason to believe that you would be inclined to go with the evidence, but that doesn't always, bear itself out when we look at what people are saying or what they're doing. In the case of this video, for example, we're watching his actual routine.
Everybody, I'm Dr. Mike Varshavsky, and I'm about to show you my nighttime skincare routine. Let's get ready for bed. By the way, you may be wondering, what the heck is this robe? Well, a friend of mine who makes these personalized robes made this for me as a joke. He saw my scrubs. He's like, I'm going to make you the same thing, but in robe form. I said, well, if I wear a white coat in the hospital, I might as well white robe when I do my nighttime routine. My skin takes an absolute beating when I'm in the hospital, when I'm playing sports, I'm outdoors. It dries out, especially as I get older. No one likes to admit that, but being 31 years old, I'm starting to see more dryness, more flaking. This is a wall beard trimmer. And for me, I like to have my facial hair cut quite short, especially when I'm going on television or I'm seeing patients. Today, it's kind of a little bit longer. And why I do it at night, this is really interesting, is because I like for it to grow out a little bit in the morning so I don't look completely baby-faced. It gives you like a little bit of scruff. I like that this trimmer has very fine edges here, so it picks up even the small hairs. And then, even though I don't shave, I do use a bronze shaver to get...
I'm interested to see what cleansing gel that is because it looked like Build Skincare, I think it is. Build Skincare. That's what that looked like, but I'm not sure. Also, I do actually like that he doesn't shave. I think that men can sometimes be left out of this conversation, and so what's interesting is that for somebody like him that has facial hair, or like myself, this probably applies a little bit less to him because I assume his routine is not as involved as mine is. But having a very involved skincare routine or having skin conditions that you're managing with your skincare routine can make the process of shaving a little bit more tricky. So like myself, for example, I do not shave my face. I use an electric trimmer with like no guard, right? So I'm shaving, but there's always, even after I finish, like kind of the way that you can tell with him, like there is still a little bit of facial hair that's visible. And I do that for a couple reasons. One, it's easier, and two, it's less irritating. I do find that I can sometimes, whenever I use an actual blade, feel like I've almost like stripped my skin a little bit too much. And that might be, depending upon the situation. I haven't done this in years, honestly, so it probably would look different now. But I did notice that sometimes I would experience some additional dryness and irritation following a shave. So what I use actually is the Philips Norelco One Blade. I find that this is super, super simple, very easy to use. He apparently went in on dry skin. If you're just trimming and you're not like trying to get as close to the skin as possible, then generally speaking, dry skin is preferred because of course the hair is not going to run through the guard as easily, or the blade as easily, if the hair is wet. However, unfortunately, that can contribute to some additional irritation because of the friction associated. Personally, I've found that using no guard on the Philips Norelco One Blade and then using it with, for example, the Prequel Cleanser, that's actually like my preferred way to shave nowadays, is in the shower. I have a mirror in the shower and I will use the Prequel Cleanser and then I will really work that into the skin, let it sit on the skin for a little bit, and then I'll go in with the Philips Norelco One Blade. But the cushion, I think, that you get from the cleanser in particular, it's a very plush product, but it's also very skin soothing, it just makes for a really really, really great shave in my opinion. Again, not a shave that is going to be as close to the skin as some people are going to want, but I, similar to him, am not opposed to having a little bit of regrowth visible. So for individuals that are actively treating something with their skincare, like whether that's acne, in my case, for example, I use prescription strength retinoids. I also use azelaic acid. I occasionally use some additional exfoliants in there as well, both for anti-aging as well as acne management. So my skin is pushed a bit further than somebody who, for example, has absolutely no routine beyond washing and moisturizing. He might have a very simple routine that doesn't predispose him toward any kind of irritation, because if he doesn't struggle with acne, for example, he won't need to use these exfoliants, these retinoids, so on and so forth. So he might be more well equipped to tolerate that kind of friction than somebody like myself would be. It's also going to be dependent upon the individual, you know, like at baseline, are you more or less sensitive to those frictional forces? So he might be able to get away with that. Not everybody will, depending upon how often you have to shave. It's not necessarily the end of the world. Like, I don't have to shave often at all. I could get away with shaving like once a week maybe. But I think for individuals that have, like, for example, he can clearly grow more facial hair than I can. So being able to find a solution to that is going to be a lot more pressing, so to speak. But we'll continue and see whether or not I was right about that cleanser.
Nice and wet with a little water. Get a little 2-pump action in there. I'm also not a fan of showering at night unless I just went to the gym. I like to shower in the morning so I can get the hair.
I'm sure that cleanser is fine. I don't know why I feel like men do this a lot, like when they wash their face, they're like they're like pushing through it or something. It's just interesting. The note about not showering in the evening, though, is very interesting. Particularly, doctors specifically will tell you that that is good practice because it reduces the transfer of, for example, ambient allergens and pollutants into the bed. Because particularly if you're not washing your hair, if you're not washing your body, you know, things can stick to the skin and the hair over the course of a day. That could be allergens that could contribute to seasonal allergies. So individuals that struggle with those should very much be cleansing. Really, I mean, ideally, you would get home from work, for example, and then you would immediately take a shower. You would place all of your clothing in like a laundry hamper. You would jump in the shower. At the very least, you would at least rinse your hair, even if you're not actually washing it, because it would just help to remove a lot of those potential irritants. Not necessarily skin irritants, might cause, like, you know, the itchy eyes and, you know, the sneezing and the runny nose, so on and so forth. I've talked about this in the past with the reaction that I did to Hiram's reaction to Leighton Meester, and we talked about what are some of the things that can be done to, you know, prevent some of these issues. So if that's of interest, you can feel free to watch that. But it's interesting that as a doctor, he does not himself do what is often recommended, which is if you're going to shower once a day, it's ideally happening in the evening because you're removing all of those pollutants, the excess sebum, like, you know, all these things before getting into bed. Most people, myself included, do not wash their bed linens every single day. So you're accruing more and more of the various pollutants that you're being exposed to over the course of the day, because obviously he's probably not wearing exactly what he was wearing when he came home from work, for example. So I think there's a lot of reasons why showering in the evening actually makes more sense than the morning. However, I do understand that he apparently, you know, wants to do whatever it is that he needs to do in order to make his hair look the way that he wants to, which as a public figure is obviously relevant to him. But I think I would prefer that he find a way to do that without making the morning shower the only one that he does, because I think, again, it just kind of creates some other potential issues. But again, if he's not somebody that has some of these problems, then I guess it is kind of a moot point.
When it comes to cleansers, I try not to be that picky. Do be careful though, if you're using a cleanser that is exfoliating in nature, you're not using that every day or even twice a day, because exfoliators can actually do damage if you use them.
It's interesting that he's talking about exfoliating and how you shouldn't be doing it too frequently, and he's very aggressively drying his face with this towel. So he's exfoliating, and presumably every single day, because this is apparently how he washes his face. Because it's not like he normally cleanses in the shower and therefore doesn't need this. So this is apparently how he washes and dries his face. That was very aggressive, at least the way that it appeared. Sometimes it will look like you're applying more pressure to the face when you are on camera than you actually are. It's interesting. Like, as somebody that has filmed myself doing skincare routines, sometimes you can, like, when you're watching it back, be like, oh, it looks like I'm being a little bit aggressive, when in reality you're maybe just contacting the skin. So he could be being a little bit less aggressive than it seems like he is, but even still, I don't really recommend drying the face with a towel anyway, because one, if you're doing it this way, it's potentially irritating because of the friction. Two, you're also potentially depriving your skin of some additional hydration, because assuming you've effectively rinsed off the cleanser and you then have nothing but water left in the skin, trapping that moisture in with whatever products are going to follow can be very helpful, particularly if you are like him. I mean, he literally was talking about how he's noticing more and more dryness as he's getting older. So him using the benefit of the water, the hydration that's left on the skin following a cleanse, he would probably be more comfortable in his skin at the end of the routine than he probably is after doing something like this following cleansing. So again, it's interesting because he's expressed an explicit concern regarding dryness, but he has already demonstrated something that I think is working against him. But he probably, like most people, I think they wash their face and then they towel dry. But that's not unusual. I just think that as normal as it seems on the surface, I think that there's a lot of ways that we can work around that. I don't think that that's the best way to do that. Like for example, when I wash my face in the shower, I typically will do that last. So I'll do whatever I'm doing with my hair, body, everything, then cleanse my face, neck, and ears last. Rinse all of that away, and then I'll grab my towel, I'll dry my hair first, dry my body, but the towel never touches my face. And that's because I'm gonna then go into my routine and I'm going to want to trap all of that moisture that is sitting in my skin because I was in the shower in my skin, as opposed to sucking it out with a fabric like a towel, only to then have to replenish it with whatever products are gonna follow. So I think that you just get more bang for buck when you leave some of that additional moisture on the skin. I think Dr. Dre has talked about this too, that she doesn't really use a towel when she's washing her face. She kind of just goes in with the product, and I think that just makes the most sense. Frankly, I think it's a little bit easier, but again, particularly if you are somebody that has, like myself, acne, and you use something like retinoids that can make your skin more sensitive to, in particular, frictional forces, it can be very helpful to modify your routine so that you are minimizing that friction and also maximizing a skin beneficial quality like hydration.
Now I'm clean, and a little pink, and a little red, and a little shiny, but that's okay. Hydration time.
Okay, so this is clearly not a very extensive routine. I mean, well, we're not even halfway through the video, and he's already in with the moisturizer, so that's interesting. But again, he can see that he is irritated by the fact that he used the towel to dry off his face. He's gonna get less out of this moisturizer than he would have gotten had he done what I recommended. So just pat in some of that excess moisture and then go straight in with the product. If this has, I mean, I don't know this product, there's probably additional ingredients in here beyond just, simple moisturizing agents. So there's probably some potential benefit that he could have seen improved by the enhanced penetration that he would have seen if his skin was more well hydrated prior to applying whatever the product is. So in this case, it's this moisturizer. But again, it's interesting that he's noting the fact that his skin seems irritated, and yet he apparently continues to use the towel. And that being said, it is worth noting that some people, myself included, have what is called reactive skin. So while I don't consider myself to be particularly sensitive, when I wash my face, whenever I receive any kind of treatments, I will redden very rapidly. And I mean, I just generally can get red very quickly. So some people are just a little bit more prone to that than others. As long as it dissipates relatively quickly and it doesn't coincide with any other signs of skin irritation, like actual dryness, like persistent redness, or tightness, any kind of irritation, flaking, inflammation really, then, you're probably fine.
Being a family medicine doctor, we actually have training in dermatology because a lot of what we do is screening and catching problems early so you understand skin cancer.
Again, this, seeing men apply skincare is it's just incredible. Like, why is that how you, that seems so inefficient. Why is that how you choose to apply it? Like, I don't know. The times when I use only one hand to apply a product are very few and far between. I don't know, it just seems so interesting. And again, they're just like
why we're so vigilant about putting SPF on. But at the same time, it allows me to spot marketing gimmicks. So when a company comes in and says they're the next greatest thing, I can look at the science behind that and find out whether it truly makes sense or not. I will say there's a lot of lies on the market nowadays, so I try and use really simple products in order to make it less complicated. Next up, I use my...
So already, you should have applied that before the moisturizer. You should always apply your eye cream prior to your moisturizer, unless that eye cream has active ingredients that you're trying to buffer against. So if you're trying to apply something like, for example, I think Muesli has launched a prescription compound product that includes tretinoin, or if you're just actually going to use your tretinoin or any other kind of retinoid as an eye cream, then you would want to, potentially buffer that so that you could minimize the risk of irritation. But I think, again, because generally speaking, an eye cream is going to be lighter than a facial moisturizer, and so you run the risk of minimizing the penetration of any skin beneficial ingredients, because if, presumably, he's not, I don't know, I guess it says hydrodynamic ultimate moisture for eyes, so it's probably, the focus of the product is probably hydration, right? But again, I would expect that a product like this from a brand like that probably has additional ingredients in it. I don't even need to look at the ingredient list to see whether or not this product is fine. It's a product that is designed and marketed to hydrate. The format of the product means that he'd probably see more benefit from the eye cream beyond the hydration piece, because he could just get that with the moisturizer, frankly. But he'd probably see more benefit from this eye cream if he had applied that first and then let that be the moisturizer for that area, and then just gone in with the moisturizer for the face elsewhere.
Where I clearly need the most help on.
Also, another thought is hair obviously has product in it. That's another thing too, is that if you are somebody that uses product in your hair care routine, which presumably he does, it looks like he has a decent amount of product in his hair right now, and presumably he's going to go to bed with that product in his hair. That's another potential concern. Again, particularly as somebody that has struggled with acne for a number of years, if you're increasing the potential residue that you're going to have sitting on your pillowcase, assuming you're not like a perfect back sleeper, which, if you are, bless you. But if you are like me and you can, sleep on your back, you can end up sleeping on your side, the other side, you're basically squishing all of that residue all over the face, right? Hair care products, because they're not designed to be on the skin, they're designed for the hair. So the company could, design a product that, provided it's rinsed thoroughly, that it's cleansed from the hair, doesn't contribute to breakouts. But if you're somebody that is susceptible to them and you're experiencing this product in ways that maybe the brand did not intend, which is, I would assume, the case for most hair care brands. They probably don't expect that you're going to be applying them to your face. But that's, on some level, that's kind of what you're doing. I mean, we're getting a little bit too into the weeds with it, I think, but like particularly if you're somebody that has acne, if you have an active condition that you're trying to manage, being conscious of these things can be very, very helpful. I mean, it sounds kind of insane, but I do use a new pillowcase or a new side of a given pillowcase every single night, in part because of this, because I don't wash like all of the sheets and everything like every single night, because that would be excessive. But because I don't necessarily wash my hair every single day, I know that there's some level of residue that will accrue, and so I don't want to then just continue to press my face against a pillow that has been soaked in whatever it is that might be sitting on my hair, even though I generally would rinse my hair in the shower. So even if I'm not washing it, it's probably being rinsed pretty thoroughly. But again, these are concerns that he probably doesn't have to worry too much about.
I also like it for the eyelids. A lot of people comment on my YouTube videos that they think I'm wearing eye makeup, some kind of orange tone. Nope, that's just 10 years of medical education showing themselves on my eyes, so I'm hoping Murad can help me out with that. The reason why our eyes look different colors sometimes, or at least our eyelids or under eye area, a lot has to do with the circulation in that area. So you have a lot of tiny blood vessels that actually are seen through the skin, and as a result you get interesting colors, blue sometimes pink, red, orange. Also really important is where the light is coming from will also decide how bad these shadows look. For example, the reason why people use fillers in their under eye area in order to improve bags or darkness underneath their eyes is because it pushes the area forward and there's less reflection of that light, less reflection of those small blood vessels underneath the eyes, therefore decreasing the darkness. Over the last 10 years, I've had certain problems with my skin, and when I was in medical school, I didn't really care that much about it because I was so buried in books or maybe spending very limited time with my friends. Now that I'm spending time talking to you at home or going on television, I need to be careful about my skin because I want to look presentable, and I've tried to take more and more steps in learning about products that are out there, speaking to dermatologists. In fact, a good friend of mine, Dr. Bonasali, is one of the best dermatologists right here, right by my home, and I always ping him if I have any questions or if we get into little arguments about certain skincare routines. It's fun in the medical community to nerd out.
Okay, so apparently he's going to be doing more than just a skincare routine. But again, the order is not right. He should have done all of his oral care before the skincare, because he would have then rinsed away with the cleansing step any potential residue. Sodium lauryl sulfate, which I have no problem with, is in a lot of toothpaste, for example. That, when left on the skin, can be highly comedogenic and potentially irritating, particularly for somebody that hasn't, a history of perioral dermatitis. Ingredients in toothpaste are not meant to be on the skin.
A floss right here with a little minty taste. I think it's called Cool Mint. Yummy. I also have specific toothpaste that I've been using recently because I've been having some issues with bleeding gums, probably stress related. A lot of people don't make the connection that your overall health, your overall well-being can actually show itself on your gums. So for me, being stressed out, I've been using a little Parodontax for my bleeding gums. And then this is kind of a cool hack to share with you guys. If you're sleeping at night and you have a stuffy nose, whether it's due to illness, allergies, and you can't breathe through your nose, you breathe through your mouth. And as a result, you develop horrible dry mouth. You wake up feeling not so great. So for me, if that ever happens to me, I use like a dry mouth spray just like this, and you give yourself a few pumps before you go to bed and you wake up and your mouth is still well lubricated. For those like me who battle with sweaty armpits throughout the day, a really cool hack is to use an antiperspirant the night before when your body's cooler, so it can actually work on plugging the pores in your armpits earlier. When you apply it in the morning, first thing in the morning, your body temperature may be warmer, you may be sweating already, so it won't be as effective. Remember, the goal of stopping armpit BO, that kind of smell, is really about decreasing the sweat, or killing the bacteria there, because as gross as it sounds, the BO is just...
So this is very interesting for a number of reasons. I think what's interesting is that, again, we talked about how he's not a dermatologist, right? And so his area of expertise is not directly related to skin or skincare. And so, and even still, like when we talk about dermatologists, there's often this implicit assumption that because they're dermatologists, they should know a lot about skincare. And in some way they do, right? Because they know a lot about what can be detrimental to skin health, what can be supportive, you know, the basics, right? Like cleansing, moisturizing, sunscreen, of course. But when it comes to building routines that address a variety of skin concerns that have maybe multiple steps to them, because maybe you have multiple concerns and that requires, you know, the use of multiple ingredients or multiple products. Generally speaking, I think that estheticians will tend to be a little bit more well-versed, both in terms of available products as well as the optimal application technique, right? Like how can we layer these to be most effective? How can we incorporate these into a weekly skincare regimen to be, you know, most effective while still accounting for some of the other things? Because the other piece too is that estheticians, we're a little bit more focused on the aesthetics, because like sometimes I recommend products that I do think are fantastic, but I will specifically tell you not to use them in the morning because of the finish, because of how it might layer with other product, because of the way it might incorporate into your sun care regimen or your makeup routine. You know, that nuance there, you tend only to find in estheticians or in dermatologists or plastic surgeons. I mean, plastic surgeons are obviously involved in aesthetics, but then when you have dermatologists that are very, very focused on medicine, very focused on skin disease, and not so much on skin aesthetics. Then, of course, there are some that are very focused on skin aesthetics, and they have a body of knowledge that, you know, more closely resembles that of an esthetician, but it's further enhanced by that medical background. They have a lot of that, you know, skincare information versus skin medicine information, but they can tie that together with some of the other stuff. So they're able to give really, really great advice and really effective product recommendations, especially in unique circumstances where there might be a very specific set of skin concerns or skin conditions present. But I think that generally speaking, you'll find that physicians that are not dermatologists, they have no direct connection to the skincare space, they generally speaking have routines that look about the same as the average person, which I just think is so interesting. I mean, I'm not a doctor, and so of course I don't know what runs through the mind of a doctor, but I think it's fascinating to think about how, exactly as he was saying, they are trained to be more evidence-based, more evidence-focused. There are tons of evidence-based products and ingredients that he could have incorporated into this routine to better care for his dry skin as well as the appearance of his skin, because he expressed a concern about that. Because of the work that he does, he wants his skin to be, you know, in relatively good shape. He could be helping his skin by doing multiple things, but I mean, at the very least, just adding a hydrating antioxidant product into that routine would have been a fantastic thing to do. Probably wouldn't cause any additional irritation. There wouldn't be too much faff around making it work. But of course, if he wanted to go all the way, he could incorporate a retinoid. And because he's a doctor, it probably wouldn't be too difficult for him to get tretinoin. And tretinoin, of course, would be the most evidence-based, the most effective, generally speaking, to address the fine lines and wrinkles, to address the pigmentation, to address the potential for skin cancer. You know, like, there's a lot of things that he could be doing that he just simply may not care to do. I mean, he's still a very good-looking person. So, I mean, he's one of those lucky few that can do whatever they want and still look amazing. So good for him. This was fun. I hold no ill will against Dr. Mike. I think that he's a fantastic content creator, and I think that the work that he does is very important. I think that he does a lot of myth busting around things that are, I think, a little bit more consequential than the order of your skincare products. As much as I apparently have enjoyed sitting here and dissecting his skincare routine, at the end of the day, none of what he did is going to put him at any risk of severe negative health outcomes, right? A lot of what he talks about on his channel is much more serious. So I think there's a lot of things that he could have done differently. The products themselves, I'm not even going to bother looking at. I'm sure that they're all fine. But again, the order that he used them in, the lack of certain products, the fact that he does not shower in the evening, he does not use any kind of active ingredient really, those are opportunities for improvement. Depending upon whether or not you experience any kind of chronic inflammatory skin condition like acne or some other condition that could potentially be exacerbated through exposure to hair care products, to, you know, various allergens, whatever the case is. If you're someone like me, I'm a little bit more cautious about some of these things, both from the perspective of somebody that has acne, that struggles with it and wants to continue to control it, as well as somebody that is focused on skin aesthetics and the appearance, health, well-being of the skin. That was a very interesting video to watch, and hopefully a very interesting video for you to watch me watch and discuss. So if you have any questions about anything that I mentioned here, if you heard me mention retinoids and you're like, oh, what's a retinoid and why should he be using one, then I do have the Retinoid Readiness Guide, which is a free PDF. It just kind of goes through why use a retinoid, how to choose one, and then how to begin using one to minimize the risk of irritation, to maximize the potential benefits. A couple product recommendations in there as well. So if that's of interest, that'll be linked in the description. But I'll see you in the next one.